Well, my dad, he didn't leave me too much. He's a very simple man, and he didn't leave me a lot. But what he told me was this. He did say, son, he said,
At 4:30 a.m. every morning while the world sleeps, an 84-year-old legend sits hunched over stacks of newspapers with scissors in hand, methodically cutting out articles like his life depends on it. Bob Dylan, Nobel Prize winner, cultural icon worth over $500 million, has been performing this bizarre ritual for over 60 years. But what he does with those clippings will completely shatter everything you thought you knew about creative genius. What if I told you that Dylan's greatest songs weren't born from inspiration, but from an obsessive daily practice so strange that even his own family called it disturbing? In this video, we'll uncover the truth behind the creative ritual that turned a folk singer into a prophet of American culture. Bob Dylan isn't just another aging rock star. At nearly 85, he's still touring relentlessly, still releasing critically acclaimed albums, still surprising the world with his artistic evolution. His never-ending tour has been running for over 3 decades, generating hundreds of millions in revenue and cementing his status as music's most enigmatic figure. But here's what the public never knew. Dylan's legendary mystique isn't an act. It's the byproduct of the most systematic approach to creativity in entertainment history. While other artists rely on inspiration or substance-fueled sessions, Dylan built his career on something far more methodical and, frankly, obsessive. The first clues emerged in the 1960s when Rolling Stone journalist Al Aronowitz visited Dylan's home and described seeing towers of newspapers stacked to the ceiling. Dylan's manager Albert Grossman once complained that Dylan's rider for concerts included delivery of local newspapers from every city within a 200-mile radius. Music historian Clinton Halen, who spent decades researching Dylan's methods, discovered something extraordinary. Dylan has kept every single newspaper clipping mentioning his name since 1961. We're talking about over 50,000 individual articles, reviews, and references, all meticulously organized in a filing system that would make a librarian weep. The truth about Dylan's daily obsession exploded into public view during a shocking 2012 lawsuit filed by his former housekeeper, Olga Ovesi. The court documents from this case read like a horror story of creative compulsion gone wrong. Ovesi described Dylan's Malibu mansion as a newspaper mausoleum, where thousands upon thousands of books, magazines, and newspaper clippings were stacked from floor to ceiling, creating narrow pathways through the house like a maze. She claimed that Dylan's bedroom was so cluttered with reading material that he could barely reach his bed. But the most disturbing revelation came when Ovesi detailed Dylan's morning routine. Mr. Dylan would wake at exactly 4:30 a.m. every single day, 7 days a week, including Christmas and his birthday. He would spend the next 3 hours reading newspapers and magazines, cutting out articles with surgical precision using special archival scissors, and filing them according to a system so complex that no one else in the household could understand it. The lawsuit documents revealed that Dylan employed 2 full-time assistants whose sole job was to organize his newspaper collection. One assistant, who requested anonymity, told the court, "Bob treated those clippings like sacred texts. If anyone moved them or threw any away, he would become physically ill with anxiety." The case was settled out of court for an undisclosed amount, but the damage to Dylan's carefully crafted image was irreversible. The mysterious troubadour was revealed to be something far more unsettling, a man whose genius was powered by what psychologists might classify as obsessive-compulsive behavior. Former band member Robbie Robertson, in his controversial 2016 memoir, provided even more disturbing details about Dylan's newspaper obsession. Robertson described recording sessions where Dylan would arrive with multiple briefcases filled with newspaper clippings. Bob would spread these clippings across the studio floor like pieces of a puzzle, Robertson wrote. He'd spend hours just staring at headlines, connecting dots that no one else could see. Sometimes he'd hum melodies while reading, as if the newspapers were sheet music only he could interpret. Robertson revealed that Dylan carried a leather portfolio containing what he called his daily harvest, the most significant clippings from that morning's reading session. He'd pull out these scraps of paper and start weaving them into lyrics right there in the studio. It was like watching someone perform surgery on American culture. The most chilling detail came from Dylan's ex-wife, Sarah, who described in divorce proceedings how Dylan's newspaper ritual had consumed their family life. Robert would disappear into his study at dawn and emerge at breakfast covered in newsprint ink, his fingers stained black like he'd been working in a coal mine, she testified. Our children learned not to interrupt Daddy's reading time because he became a different person, agitated, unreachable, almost violent if disturbed. Sarah Dillon's testimony painted a picture of a man whose creative genius came at an enormous personal cost. He couldn't hold normal conversations anymore. Every topic somehow connected back to patterns he'd identified in his clippings. He'd interrupt dinner to announce that something he'd read that morning proved his theory about America's cultural decline, or the coming revolution, or whatever obsession was consuming him that week. Here's the revelation that will change everything you thought you knew about Bob Dylan's creativity. His newspaper ritual isn't random collecting. It's a sophisticated early warning system for cultural change that he's been refining for over 6 decades. Dylan doesn't just read the news, he reads the patterns within the news. His filing system, which music critic Greil Marcus described as the most complex information management system outside the CIA, tracks recurring themes, linguistic patterns, and cultural shifts across thousands of sources. In a rare 2017 interview with the Wall Street Journal, Dylan finally admitted the truth. I read everything, every day, not for entertainment, for survival. The newspapers tell you what's coming before the people living it even know. My songs aren't prophecy, they're journalism from the future. This explains Dylan's uncanny ability to anticipate cultural movements. Blowin' in the Wind predicted the civil rights explosion of the mid-1960s because Dylan had been tracking racial tensions in local newspapers from across the South. Like a Rolling Stone captured the countercultural revolution because Dylan identified patterns of youth rebellion in campus newspapers months before it hit mainstream media. Music historian Sean Wylans confirmed this theory after studying Dylan's archives. Bob wasn't writing protest songs, he was writing cultural seismograph readings. He could feel the earthquake coming because he was monitoring every tremor through his newspaper network. The method works like this. Dylan reads newspapers from around the world each morning, looking for recurring themes and language patterns. He files articles that resonate with historical precedents he's identified over decades. When he writes, he doesn't start with melodies. He starts with the clippings, weaving fragments of tomorrow's headlines into today's songs. The human cost of Dylan's obsessive method is staggering. Friends and family describe a man who sacrificed normal human relationships for cultural prophecy. His children report feeling like strangers to their father, who seemed more connected to newspaper headlines than to his own family. Former Columbia Records executive John Hammond Jr. revealed in his memoirs that Dylan's contracts included unusual clauses requiring the label to provide him with newspaper subscriptions from every major city where his albums were released. Bob needed to track how his ideas were spreading, what language people were using to describe his music, what cultural conversations he was influencing, Hammond wrote. The psychological toll became evident during Dylan's famous motorcycle accident in 1966, which many biographers now believe was actually a nervous breakdown triggered by information overload. Dylan's retreat from public life for nearly 2 years coincided with what his inner circle called his newspaper detox, a period where he was allegedly forbidden by doctors from reading any news media. Yet, at 84, Dylan shows no signs of stopping. His 2020 album, Rough and Rowdy Ways, proved he's still ahead of the curve, addressing themes of American decline and social fragmentation that wouldn't become mainstream concerns until 2021. The man who taught us that the times they are a-changin' never stopped reading those times, cataloging them, and transforming them into art. Dylan's newspaper ritual reveals something profound about the nature of artistic genius. While the public imagined him as a mystical figure channeling divine inspiration, the reality was far more methodical and, in many ways, more impressive. Dylan built his reputation as America's greatest songwriter through pure intellectual labor, reading, analyzing, and synthesizing information with the dedication of a scholar and the intuition of a poet. His method explains why Dylan's Nobel Prize in Literature made perfect sense to those who understood his true process. He wasn't just a songwriter, he was a cultural anthropologist using music as his medium to document and predict American consciousness. Today, record executives study Dylan's clipping system, hoping to manufacture the next cultural prophet. They all fail because they miss the essential element. Dylan's ritual wasn't just about collecting information, it was about surrendering his personal identity to become a vessel for collective American experience. Perhaps the most haunting aspect of Dylan's story is what it suggests about the price of prescience. To see the future, he sacrificed the present. To capture the voice of his generation, he surrendered his own voice to the endless whisper of newsprint and deadline ink. Bob Dylan's weird daily creative ritual isn't just a quirky habit. It's a Faustian bargain with time itself, trading human connection for artistic immortality, personal warmth for cultural prophecy. Thanks for watching. Click here to check another video and make sure to subscribe to our channel.